The house stood alone, isolated, forgotten. It was a husk of secrets, shrouded in overgrown ivy and shadowed by towering oaks. Windows, like vacant eyes, stared out blankly. Locals whispered tales of tragedy, of a family vanished, their fate unknown. But the stories were just whispers, lost in the wind that howled through the eaves. The paint peeled, a canvas of decay. Each chipped layer revealed another era of neglect, another year closer to oblivion. The porch sagged, its wooden teeth bared in a silent snarl. The house was a tombstone, a monument to forgotten lives and lingering sorrow. It was a place where darkness lingered, where the air hung heavy with unspoken truths. The house on Harbinger Lane, a place where the past refused to die. Daniel Blackwood, a paranormal investigator, was drawn to the house. He specialized in the unexplained, the echoes of tragedy that clung to places like this. His tools were simple: an audio recorder, a camera, and an unwavering belief in the unseen. Daniel's car crunched on the gravel driveway, disturbing the unsettling silence. He stepped out, a lone figure against the backdrop of the decaying mansion. The air grew colder, a palpable shift in atmosphere. He felt a weight settle upon him, a sense of dread that was as tangible as the chill in the air. He raised his camera, snapping a photo of the house. The click of the shutter echoed through the silence, a sharp intrusion into the house's stillness. He was not alone. He could feel it. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the smell of decay. The house had been abandoned for years, left to the ravages of time and neglect. Every corner held a story, every shadow a secret. Daniel set up his equipment, his movements slow and deliberate. He had done this many times before, but each investigation brought a new sense of anticipation and unease. He placed the audio recorder in the center of the living room, its reels spinning silently. The device was old but reliable, a trusted companion in his quest to uncover the unknown. He began his investigation, his footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. The sound was almost musical, a haunting melody that resonated through the empty rooms. He examined faded photographs, touched crumbling wallpaper, and ran his fingers over the names etched into the wall, a child's handwriting frozen in time. Each artifact was a piece of the puzzle, a clue to the lives once lived here. As he explored, he began to hear them, whispers, faint and indistinct, swirling around him. They seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, a chorus of voices trapped in the ether, voices from the past trapped within the walls. He listened intently, his hand hovering over the recorder. Each whisper was a fragment of a forgotten story, a plea for recognition. The voices grew stronger, filled with a chilling despair. A woman's voice, pleading. Her words were lost to time, but the emotion was unmistakable. A cry for help that had gone unanswered for decades. A child's cry, abruptly silenced. The sound was heart-wrenching, a stark reminder of the innocence that had once filled these halls. The sound sent shivers down his spine. He could feel the cold grip of fear tightening around him, a visceral reaction to the unseen presence that surrounded him. He was surrounded by ghosts, their anguish echoing through the years. They were not just memories. They were entities, bound to this place by their unresolved pain. He was not just an investigator now. He was a witness to the sorrow and suffering that had permeated these walls, a silent observer to the tragedies that had unfolded here. The weight of their stories pressed down on him, a heavy burden that he carried as he continued his search for the truth. Days turned into nights, and the cycle continued relentlessly. Daniel slept little, haunted by the whispers and the growing feeling of unease. Each night the shadows seemed to grow darker, the whispers louder, as if they were closing in on him. He reviewed his recordings, enhancing the audio, searching for answers in the static and hiss. Every crackle and pop felt like a clue, a piece of a puzzle he was desperate to solve. One night, while examining footage of the living room, he saw it. His eyes widened in disbelief, his breath caught in his throat, a flicker of movement in the background. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but unmistakably there. A face, pale and gaunt, staring directly at the camera. Its eyes were empty, yet they seemed to bore into his soul. He rewound, his heart pounding in his chest. There it was again, the same face, the same haunting expression, the face appearing for a split second before vanishing into the shadows. It was as if it was playing a game with him, teasing him with its presence. It was a woman, her eyes hollow and filled with a deep sorrow. Her presence was both terrifying and tragic. He recognized her from a photograph he had found, a family portrait, now torn and faded. The connection was undeniable, but the story behind it remained a mystery. The house was revealing its secrets, but at a cost. Each revelation brought with it a deeper sense of dread. His fear was morphing into a morbid fascination. He was drawn to the mystery, unable to pull himself away. He had to know more. The need for answers consumed him, driving him deeper into the darkness of the house's past. The echoes were everywhere, reverberating through the very fabric of the house. In the creaking floorboards, in the rustling leaves outside the windows, they whispered secrets of the past. In the silence that hung heavy between the whispers, there was a palpable tension, a sense of foreboding. He felt a constant presence watching him, judging him, as if the house itself was alive and aware of his every move. The house was a conduit, amplifying the remnants of its tragic past, each room a chapter in a sorrowful tale. Each echo was a piece of a puzzle, a fragment of a story he was desperate to uncover, a mystery that consumed his every thought. He began to experience vivid dreams, dreams that felt more real than his waking life. Fragments of memories that weren't his own, yet they felt intimately familiar, as if he had lived them in another life. He saw flashes of violence, moments of intense fear and pain that left him breathless. He heard the screams of terror echoing in his mind long after he had woken up. He felt the icy grip of fear, a cold hand that seemed to reach into his very soul. He was no longer just an observer, a passive witness to the house's horrors. He was being drawn into the house's nightmare, becoming an unwilling participant in its tragic story. Becoming a part of its tragic story, he could feel the weight of its sorrow pressing down on him. His fear was a living thing now, feeding his obsession, growing stronger with each passing day, driving him deeper into the darkness, into the heart of the house's anguish, where the echoes never ceased.